So yesterday I was speaking about ways to develop the attitude of care and respect for the practice, so that we can develop concentration quickly, and based on that concentration develop knowledge. So in speaking about the practice, I'd like to speak about a few more things, some things I didn't have a chance to speak about last night. In the practice, we're asked to observe things as they are. Observe what is there as it is, which is based on this Pali, Bhutan Bhutato Pasati. And it's also in accordance with what is said in the Mahasatipatthana Sutta, Kaye Kayanupasi Viharati. One needs to observe the matter, the body, in the body as it is. We need to observe matter as matter, kaya as kaya. So in that regard, I would like to say a little bit about the use of labels when we practice. Right. So, for example, if we're working with the primary object of rising and falling, when the abdomen rises, we note it as rising. When it falls, we're told to note it as falling. In your language, it will be something different. And then, for example, if seeing occurs, note it as seeing. Hearing is hearing, and so on. So we're asked to do our practice using these labels. So one may say, well, there isn't any such thing as rising. It's just we feel things like stiffness, tension, and so on. And what we are trying to know, we are trying to know true nature, and things like rising or falling or seeing, hearing, these are just concepts. They're just labels for what is really happening there. So why do we observe, when we're trying to observe true nature, things like heat and hardness and so on, why do we use concepts? Why do we use these names as part of the practice?
Yeah.
So this is true. At the beginning of the practice, in the earlier part of the practice, we shall say, that at this time, true nature is being observed using concept as a way to help catch it. But when we have to have those labels, because, as I explained, there are three ways in which we see whenever we try to watch our body with our mind. We might see the shape of the body, like the leg, when it lifts, and that's the form. Okay, so that's one level on which we see, and the leg is just a concept. It's just conceptual. But when we see on that level, that is still seeing. Okay, there's still knowing. So we have to understand that our knowing has to start with whatever level it's at. We can't just make it see true nature right at the start. So seeing leg is one thing, one way in which we see. And another way in which we see is we see the leg is bent or stretched out. In this case it's the arm. We see the manner. This is called manner or position of being bent or stretched out, or lifting or moving or placing. Or the body is sitting. Body is shape, but sitting is posture. So this is another level on which we can see, and this is also concept. But when if we're observing the posture in meditation, we observe it as sitting, or we observe it as standing. We use these labels. And at the start of the practice, in the earlier stages of the practice, we need this because this is the level on which we're seeing. We're not solely seeing true nature at that time. So I think I mentioned yesterday that using labels helps us to not get the objects mixed up. It helps us to be more clear about what it is we're watching, and it also gives mental energy. But as our practice develops, as we develop the factors of virya, sati, samadhi, so that concentration develops based on concentration, knowledge develops, just through our repeated observation of the main objects and the other objects which arise. Gradually, the mind becomes stronger and stronger. This meditative mind becomes developed. And at that time, the mind goes beyond these conceptual levels. It goes beyond the name. It goes beyond concept, form, or manner, and is firmly established on the true nature. So at that time, there's no concept left. So at that time, no concept left. I shouldn't say that, but the concepts such as concepts of form and manner do not exist any longer. So at that time, it's not so meaningful. It's just a distraction for the mind to make the note of lifting. When the mind doesn't have any, it doesn't fall on any concept of lifting, or it doesn't, it doesn't see leg at all. It just sees, lightness or pushing or tension or things like that. So at that time, the names such as lifting, moving, placing, rising and falling can be a distraction. So at that time, it can still be useful to use labels such as hardness or softness and so on. But this is not the way our minds are when we start out. So we really need to work with the labels in the earlier stages of the practice until the samadhi and knowledge, concentration and knowledge are very well developed. And further, there are times when objects come much too quickly to be labeled. One can't possibly label everything that one is able to see. The things happen just one after another too quickly. And at that time, there are two ways of watching. There are two ways of working with this situation when the objects are very fast. And this one way is to just label the things that one is able to label. Just label what one can. Like there's a sound and one knows sound, so one labels it. But, there are many, many things happening, and you just label, catch what you can, and let the rest of them go. The other way is to just watch when things are happening so fast that you can't keep up with them, with the labels. So that is regarding use of labels. So I would also like to say, in addition to what I mentioned about doing the practice carefully, as though you're crossing a narrow footbridge, or as though you are carrying a bowl brimful of oil. There are also some suggestions in the text about how to behave with regard to what you hear, see, smell, taste, touch, and so on. And this actually comes from a talk that the Buddha gave to the Devas. So the first instruction the Buddha gave was, although we have eyes, we should behave as though we're blind. So, what does that mean?
Donc la première instruction du Bouddha, c'est bien que nous ayons des yeux, nous devrions nous comporter comme si nous étions aveugles. Qu'est-ce que ça signifie?
So we must behave as though we're blind, even though we can see. Our eyes are perfectly good, and that means that when seeing happens, you put your attention on the eye, and you just note seeing, to observe the process that happens at the eye door. the process, as I mentioned, that seeing happens, just to review, seeing happens when there's a visible object, and the light reflected from the visible object strikes the eye base, the receptor, which is capable of seeing, capable of receiving the visible object, and at that time there's this spark that happens, the consciousness of seeing consciousness, and also the feeling, good or bad, and the contact, the sense of the object and the mind meeting. So these are the things that happen, and we try to see these are the real elements involved in the moment of seeing. And to know that at the moment of seeing, when there's an object that is seen, we just have to note the seeing, instead of responding, oh, what is that, who is that a man, is that a woman, and so on. So some yogis who practice carefully and respectfully, they can even say that when the object strikes the eye, they don't just see a continual form, they see one after another, one bit of the visual object after another in a series. That yogi is practicing carefully, because in fact it's not just a unified, everything is made up of parts. And so when you watch carefully, you can not only see that there's the eye, or that there's the visible object, or that there's consciousness at that moment, or feeling good or bad, or the sense of contact, but you can see more deeply into what is this form that is seen, what is the eye that is seeing, that is the base. So it's good to practice in this way, to just observe the process of seeing as seeing. So the second instruction the Buddha gave was, although we have ears to hear, we should behave as though we're deaf. So in the same way, in the moment of hearing, there's a sound that strikes the ear, and hearing consciousness occurs together with the contact of the mind and the object at the base, at the sense base. And from that contact, there's a feeling, good or bad, or neutral. So sound is just something to be noted. When there's a sound, there's no need to turn and look to see what's happening. If we get involved in the sound and then we listen to it, it means that we've put aside the work of observation at that time. Our work is dropped. So we have to keep our work continuous. The third instruction the Buddha gave to the Devas was that although we have knowledge, we should behave as though we are dumb, not unable to speak, but as though we are dumb. So this means that we may have various types of things that we've learned to a high extent. We may have degrees, we may have many years of experience in our work, very well-developed skills, very well-developed ability to think or analyze or reflect. But if you really want to know about true nature, what is really happening in your mind and body, then although we know a lot, we should consider ourselves to be the absolute beginner. And we should just follow directions, without thinking about it. This is an attitude that helps our practice a lot. So we can't just do what we think. We really need to drop our vast accumulated skill. In some cases, people have a very large amount of learning, but this you need to put aside. Further, the Buddha said that although we have physical strength, we should behave as though we are weak. And this means that although it's very easy for us to bend our arm or stretch our arm or stand up or sit down and so on, perform various actions, we may be very strong and healthy, but we have to perform the actions that we do slowly, especially the changes in posture. These need to be done slowly, as if we're an invalid. And you can think about, perhaps people who have experienced back problems can understand this, that when you have a back problem, you want to take care in how you stand up or sit down, because if you do it too quickly, you can hurt your back. So this is how we should move about, especially when we change our posture. And the last instruction the Buddha gave was that when it's to our benefit, we should just sit there like we're a corpse. And this is with regard to how to work with pain. So when we have just a bit of sati, just a bit of mindfulness, then we start to feel pain in the body. And at that time, if we change our position again and again to relieve the pain, we won't be able to develop concentration and knowledge. So when difficult feelings like pain arise, we have to think as though our body is just a corpse, because they don't react to anything. They just sit there. So when pain arises and we start to observe it, it increases. And if at that time, if we change our position, we won't come to know the pain. If we change at that time, we'll just lose the concentration that has been building up. So one needs to be patient when pain arises. And so if one can observe pain patiently, as some of the yogis know at this point, our concentration increases, and there's no longer any awareness of the place where the pain is occurring. There's no longer any knee that is aching. There's no longer any shoulder or back that is aching. There's just aching and the mind which knows it. So then at that time the pain has become very beneficial, because one is knowing true reality. Pain is true reality. The mind that it knows the pain is also true reality. It's true nature. So sometimes people shift when there's just a little bit of pain, a little itch. So if we shift like that, we won't develop concentration. And without concentration, there won't be any knowledge. So these are instructions that the Buddha gave that help us to persevere in the practice, to behave as though we're blind, although we can see, behave as though we are deaf, although we can hear perfectly well, behave as though we are dumb, even though we are very learned and smart, and behave as though we are an invalid, although we're quite strong, and behave as though we're a corpse when we have these difficult feelings of pain. That is, it's not trying to urge you to become a corpse or to die, but to just practice as though your body is a corpse.
Excuse me, it is not to...
It's not to make people think that they should die.
Okay.
You know. I'm not trying to encourage death, just observation of pain. So when we meditate, only if we calm our body will we be able to make our mind calm. So that means that one thing that helps us to calm our body is to just do one thing at a time. So I think I saw a yogi the other day who was walking and drinking a cup of something at the same time as she was doing walking meditation. And I know she doesn't know. I did not have a chance to tell her, so this is just way of saying that's an example of doing two things at the same time. So try not to do that. Try not to be, arranging your hair or arranging your clothing at the same time as you walk. Try to stand and observe the standing before you reach for the door and open it. Things like that. So just do one thing at a time, and that will make the body more calm, and making the body more calm will help the mind to be calm. So when one makes one's body a little bit calm, it always happens that, at least at the beginning, it happens that discomfort will arise. And when there's discomfort, typically the mind gets disturbed. So when there's both physical discomfort and mental disturbance, it's quite difficult. It becomes difficult for the yogi. So when these difficulties arise, physical discomfort, mental discomfort, one shouldn't have the attitude of observing them in order to make them disappear. Because our job is to observe so as to know. We want to make our goal knowing what is happening, not making it disappear. And so we have to note them so that we come to know them for ourselves. And we have to note them until they go away. So this work of vipassana that we do is the work of seeing what is there the way it really is. And what is really there as it is. Anything that has arisen is going to disappear by itself. So we don't need to do anything to make it disappear. But we just have to work to observe things the way they are. So in the case where someone, you can't bear watching it anymore, how should I say, it's not that you can never change position, but you have to, if you decide to retreat from the battle of watching pain, you must make your change in posture one with total mindfulness. So let's chant the Mahasatipatthana Sutta.